What's good people, it's JayCactus here, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how I make Drake type beats. We're also going to create our own synth bass from scratch, but if you don't want to tweak all the settings yourself, then I've left a link to the preset in the description, so make sure you download that. And before you watch the video, please like it and subscribe because I'm going to be dropping new content on a regular basis. So yeah, let's get into it. Alright, so the first thing we're going to start with is the synth bass. So what you need to do is add an instance of GMS, which is a stock FL plugin. And once it's open, in the bank you want to click on Basses, User and Default. And then this is just a basic sound. It's just the default sound that you get with it. Alright, so from here we're going to change the voices to roughly 8. You don't have to be exact, by the way. Obviously you can change it to something that you feel is better for the song. But for me, I'm going to go voices 8. Stereo, maybe about 50. For noise, I'm going to bring it up to 20. And then detune, 30. For octave, I'm going to bring it down to. So far, we're sounding like this, which is a bit too harsh for a Drake kind of synth. So I'm going to drop the cutoff to about 40. Sounding a bit better already. And the resonance, I'm going to bring up to about 46, 45. And then you can hear it's still kind of quiet, so I'm going to bring the amplitude up. Maybe about that is good. And then the next thing you want to do is click in the wrench tool, turn on quarter and mono, and then turn up the slide a bit as well, maybe to about 0.10. And then that just makes it slide into the next note rather than having it being so sudden. It just sounds a bit more natural. But for those that have just downloaded the preset, save the preset in the right folder first. It might be different on all of them, but mine, you want to go to Image Line, Data, FL Studio, Presets, Plugin Presets, Generators, and then GMS. And then I've dragged in the Drake preset here. So once you're in GMS, click the little arrow, Browse Presets, Drake, and then you can drag that in. And then you've got it in here. So the key I'm going to work in is C sharp minor. And the first thing I did was the synth bass pattern, which was just this. Alright, pretty simple, but I just wanted to use that for the intro. And then I used the 808 for the other bass. So once I had the synth bass that I wanted, the next thing I used was Contact. So in Contact I used Exhale just to get some vocal chops. I feel like Drake uses a lot of vocal chops and synth basses, which is why I use both of them. So I used a preset called Cycles. Just got a nice little pattern going like that, and then together it sounded like. And then when the verse comes in, next thing I added was a snare. Just a simple pattern for the snare. And then I added the kick. Then after I added the kick pattern, next was the hi-hat. Again, quite a simple pattern, with a few rolls in there. And then an open hi-hat just to kind of complement that. And what I did here was I set the open hi-hat to cut itself, because I wanted the second one to be a bit shorter. So in the first one, it's just normal. And then the second one, I put a note here and then a second note with the velocity all the way down. And that just makes sure that the volume drops straight as the snare hits. And I also turn the velocity down at this second note, just a little touch as well. And then the 808, I kept a similar pattern to the synth bass, but I brought a few notes up. And for the 808, I made that cut itself as well. So you can either go into the wrench tool and select cut itself, or you can right click and select cut itself. Both do the same thing. Next was a rim shot. Pretty simple. And they're the only elements that I added. I wanted to keep it kind of simple because when Drake makes tracks, his vocals are always predominant. So I wanted to keep space for his vocals and not go over the top with producing. But I also wanted to switch it up so there's more variety. So for the first half, I had an 808. And then the second half, I had the synth bass. Then just to make it a bit more interesting, I added a reverse kick just before it drops, just to create some extra energy. So I used the same kick as I did throughout the whole song, but I reversed it. So once you're working with a kick here, I just dragged it into playlist, and then from there, I made it unique, just so it didn't mess with any of the other kicks. And then double clicked on it and reversed it. So. And that just before it would drop creates a mad energy. So I'll show you what that sounds like. Just a bit different. I don't really see people using that, but it sounded sick. And then I added an impact on the drop just to add some more energy. So then together with the intro,
JayCactus.
hey, yo, it sounds hard. So for the chorus, I pretty much took out all of the elements and just left the synth bass and the vocal chop. And then I also added a snap, which I wasn't using in the verse, just to add a bit of variation. So that sounds like this. Quite a lot of reverb on a snap, which I'll show you in the mixing stage. And then just a different hi-hat pattern for the second half. And then you can see that I've used some automation in the reverb and delay. All that is some heavy reverb on the snare just before the verse ends. Alright, and all I did for that was in the snare, I had some reverb here. You just right click on this knob here, create automation clip, and then you can keep it down and just bring it up in the points you wanted it. So I just wanted it on this last snare, so I could have just dragged it up there and then back down. And then the same again for the end of the next verse. And then same for the delay too. So in the hi-hats, I'll show you what it sounded like without the delay. Sounds fine, but I just wanted to give it some more space and just make it a bit more interesting. So for the delay, I just had it on 2 for time. I brought the volume of the input a bit down, set it to ping pong so it could go from the left to the right ear, and then sounded like this. You can just about hear it. So once I had all the elements that I wanted and arranged everything, I sent everything to the mixer channel. And to do that, all you need to do is highlight everything. You can just click and drag, which is probably the easiest way. Go into the mixer channel, click on the first one, and then it's Control, Shift, and L. And that sends everything to the mixer. If you wanted to add the color like I have done, you have everything selected first, click the arrow down here, color selected, and then gradient, and then you can choose the color that you want and then send it to the mixer track so all of the colors match. All right, so for the kick, I just took out some of the real lows because I knew that the 808 was going in there, so I wanted to save some room for that. And then boost at around 100 hertz and dipped a bit at around 300. It just gave it a different sound, and I felt like it didn't need all of the highs as well. So before, it would sound like this. And then after. Then for the synth bass, I added some blood overdrive just to add a bit of distortion in a way. So before it sounded like this. And then after, it just adds a bit more high end, and that will help it cut through phones and laptop speakers. And then for the EQ, I just took out some of the highs. I didn't feel like I needed all of them. And then on the limiter, I've sidechained the kick to the synth bass. So to do that, you just highlight the kick, right click on the channel that you want to sidechain it to, and then sidechain to this track. And then it will look like this. I've also done it to the 808 with pretty much the same settings. So then when you're in the compression, you just want to play around with the settings until you can hear the kick come through, but it's not affecting the bass too much. And you can see it ducking in these little purple areas here. And then I did the same for the 808. Right, so for the rim shot, I just took out some of the lows. And then for the snare, just took out some of the lows again. And this is the reverb that we use just for the ending of the verse. With some low cut, I made the wet level around 50%, dries at 100, stereo separation around 30%, decay of around 1.6, and then I increased the size of the room as well. And then for the open hat, just took out some of the lows because they weren't needed. I think same with the hi-hat. The 808, I used one of Decap's 808s. And to me, it was already mixed perfectly. Like, it didn't need any distortion because it was getting a lot of high end still. So if I play this, you can kind of see that that's going to cut through a phone or a laptop because it's not just the sub or bass frequencies. You're getting a lot of low mids and some mids, even a few ghosts in the high mid. And then in the vocal chops, I just took out some of the lows again, just to save some space for all of the 808s and the kicks. I just feel like the sub and the bass frequencies are where all of the muddiness happens, or all of the kind of clashing. So that's what you want to save room for most. You see that in a lot of tutorials, that people are just taking out most of the lows, and they're doing it for a reason. And then for the snap, just a subtle bit of reverb. Wet level at 29, dry at 88. Size of the room at around 54, some low cut around 230 hertz, and that sounded like this. Nothing too crazy, but it just sounds nice. It gives it some space. And that's pretty much it for the mixing stage. To be honest, mixing is mostly just leveling the tracks, because most of the sounds that you're using from these drum kits have already been EQ'd and compressed, so you don't really need to add too much to them. So the trick is just to start off with high quality sounds. Sound selection is like the most important thing. As long as you've got a good sound selection and a good balance of levels, then you're pretty much there. You don't need to go too crazy with anything. I think the only other thing I added was maybe just boosting some highs in the open hat and the highs. If you ever want to check if you've got a good mix, there's a plugin that I use called Isotope Tonal Balance. And it all just depends on what kind of track you want, but for this I wanted it quite bass heavy. So if I play this now in one of the main sections, you can see I'm about there. Could maybe boost some low mids. I might have a lot of bass, but I like how it sounds. So I wouldn't go just from this, it just gives you a rough idea, but it all just depends how you want your track to sound. And that's pretty much it for this video. I didn't want to go too crazy on it because, like I said, Drake's vocals are always predominant on his tracks, so I didn't want to add too many elements and not save space for vocals. I just wanted to give you a bit of a breakdown on how I make these type of beats, but hopefully you took something from it. And if you're feeling the beat, please like the video and subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be dropping new content on a regular basis. And again, the link to the preset for GMS is in the description. And I'll let the beat play out now so you can hear the fully mixed version.
JayCactus.